SciByte is produced by JupiterBroadcasting.com, independent entertainment that's on demand and always thoughtful. Check us out. Hi everyone, you're listening to SciByte, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly science show, recorded live on November 8th, for release on November 9th. My name is Chris, and joining me like every single week is Heather. Hey there, Heather.
Hello there, Chris.
Hey, welcome back to SciByte.
That is right.
Now, we might be breaking the rules with this show tonight. We might have too much show, and I apologize up front. It's a big week, and a lot of things happened in science. I mean, you guys realize that when an asteroid nearly hits the Earth, we got to have a big SciByte.
Yeah.
And Heather, what I love about you is I know since before we even recorded the first relaunch of SciByte, you've already been planning to talk about this topic. Because you were looking up in the sky. You knew this asteroid was coming. You knew this was going to happen. So we have, of course, that to talk about.
Yes.
Plus, I'm looking through our show notes doc right now. We're also going to talk a little bit about some direct observations of disks around a black hole. That sounds pretty interesting. Yep. As well as new elements added to the periodic table. And some Mars news, actually a lot of Mars news. Also, this is interesting, a plant that hurts the brain. We'll talk about that. Yeah, and it's not just caffeine.
No.
And then also some Sony stuff and some sun stuff. I mean, this is unbelievable. And the Russians are up to some stuff. And then after we get through all of that, we'll look up into the sky. So that's pretty exciting. Now, I've got a big announcement I want to make. But I thought maybe before I got to the announcement, we'd read some email because we haven't read feedback on the show since we relaunched.
That's right.
So we had someone send us in an email. His name is Duncan, I think. Do you have that up? Do you want to read Duncan's feedback to us?
Yep. We were talking about the various satellites in a couple episodes back coming
18,
down.
Yeah.
Yep. And he said, first of all, I guess we can skip the I love the show part.
He does say he liked the audio version, though. I like that.
Yes. So that is good. So let's see. In episode 18, you discussed the satellite coming down to Earth and seemed a bit confused as to why these come down in an uncontrolled fashion. The reason I decided to mail you is the hope of explaining why this is. With all the satellites we launch, it gets pretty crowded in space, especially in some of the more useful or commonly used orbits. In order to avoid having dead satellites in place where an active satellite could be, there are some guidelines. These guidelines dictate that you either have to move your satellite to a graveyard orbit or let it come down and burn up in the atmosphere at the end of life.
Now, that point right there is kind of interesting. I didn't know there was such a thing as like a lower graveyard orbit, but that makes total sense. There's like a spot in space that these things go to die.
Yeah. That's the last thing you have to do is send the message to go to this specific graveyard orbit.
Yeah, where they can kind of hang out there. All right, okay. What else do you say?
The graveyard orbit is located a few hundred kilometers above the altitude for geostationary satellites, about 36,000 kilometers. GEO satellites typically go there at the end of life. They will, in theory, remain in this orbit indefinitely. For other satellites, typically low Earth orbit ones, which are between 200 and 2,000 kilometers, they bring them down and let them burn up. These guidelines state that the satellite has to burn up within 15 years after the end of its life, so that it's not necessary to bring it down immediately in a controlled fashion.
I'll link to the rest of his email in the show notes, but he kind of goes on to say that it essentially comes down to no one's really regulating exactly how these are brought down, and it also a big part of the factoring is fuel savings and getting the most fuel out of the satellite, because then that you get the most operational lifetime out of it that way. Yeah. It's a really great email, and I wanted to thank Duncan for sending that in because it makes total sense, and he's got like some cred too. He's like a student at an aerospace engineering student at the Technical University of Delft. Don't know what that is, but that sounded pretty impressive. So thank you, Duncan, for sending that in. You too can write us SciByte at JupiterBroadcasting.com or just leave a comment wherever you are enjoying this episode.
That's right.
All right. Now, before we jump into all the news, I wanted to make my announcement. I teased earlier, like on the social networks and stuff, that I had something to announce for Jupiter Broadcasting fans, and that is the Jupiter Signal. That is Jupiter Broadcasting's new monthly newsletter. It's not ready yet. It'll be probably out the gates on the first week of December, but we have an awesome newsletter we're putting together. Tons of stuff. I'm going full-time now with Jupiter Broadcasting.
That's right.
And we're going to just be doing a whole bunch of more stuff. And
Awesome.
I'm trying to come up with ways to keep everybody informed of new stuff that'll be launching and new changes that are coming up and new things we're doing for the holidays, all kinds of stuff. And I think the newsletter is going to be a great way to let people know. So if you go over to the show notes, there is in the show notes a little form where you'll be able to just put your email address in and sign up. We don't spam or nothing like that. We don't sell your address. You can get on the Jupiter signal and you'll get our newsletter. And trust me, you guys are going to love this thing.
I'm looking forward to it. I saw that. I saw that and I was like, ooh.
And you know what
newsletter.
I'll do? You know what I'm going to do, Heather? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put, for the people who are watching live, they'll be some of the first people to sign up on our news. These people in the chat room right now will be some of the very first to be on the newsletter. So there you go. So I'll put the link in the chat room. All right. Well, okay. So anyways, moral of the story is go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, check the show notes, and sign up for the newsletter. I promise you guys will absolutely love it. All right. That's all I wanted to say. That's what our sponsor is this week is the Jupiter Signal. And now with that said, let's move on to the news. All right, our first story has to be this big story that everybody in the science world is talking about, and that's
everyone in the science world is talking about.
Yeah. So we want to tell what is YU-55?
It is an asteroid that flew in between the Earth and the Moon this afternoon. The day of the airing actually was what is closest. Well, the day of the recording was its closest approach.
It flew between the Earth and the Moon.
Yes.
Wow. And we actually have we'll go into more details here, but this actually is a clip from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and here I'll play this for you.
2005 YU-55 cannot hit Earth, at least over the interval that we can compute the motion reliably, which extends for several hundred years. It's going to be moving very rapidly as it traverses the sky near the Earth on November 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. In effect, it'll be moving straight at us from one direction, and then it'll go whizzing by and straight away from us in the other direction. So its motion across the sky will be close to 180 degrees over the course of less than 2 days. It made a close approach to Earth about 18 months ago. In April of 2010, colleagues of ours at Arecibo Observatory were able to observe this asteroid using the radar facility at Arecibo. And they were able to obtain radar images that showed that this object is about 400 meters across. On November 8th, 9th, 10th, we'll be observing it again.
So there you go. So this sounds like it's not huge, but it's also not unfamiliar to us. Like it's been around before.
Yeah, we've seen it before, and we've been able, and just through minimal tracking of objects of this nature, we can plug it into models and project forward what we believe its orbit will be and how it's affected by other things. And then this next go around, we're really watching it very closely with as many eyes on it as we can get, so we can get a better idea of its orbit and its future.
I guess one of the funny things, though, I was reading from some of the links you have in the show notes is that it wasn't really even until 2005 that they were totally sure it wasn't going to hit Earth, right? There wasn't complete consensus on that.
Yeah, there was, with an object this big, there will at some point be someone that says, I think it might get close enough to Earth that we need to be concerned.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because there actually is some that are out there that they actually think that, right? But this one, they're like, no, the math, we're pretty comfortable. And is it because it's not so big they don't have to worry about like it inflicting any kind of gravitational woes onto Earth?
No, it's not going to be able to inflict anything on Earth. This time around, it has no detectable effect on anything. It's not going to affect the tides, tectonic plates, the moon.
Good. So I don't have to worry about it like people out there, not me personally, but people out there don't have to worry about it messing with their surfing habits or anything like that.
No, surfing, no jellyfish have to concern that the high tide's going to happen at a different time.
So, do you know, has there ever been any conversation? Hell, Heather, when something this close flies by Earth, why aren't we just like out there throwing stuff at it to I don't know, make rocks bounce off and capture it like we did before? It just seems like the scientific potential here was completely lost.
Well, like to land on it or to move it?
Whatever. Why not to move it? Why not to move it if not to just see if we have the capability?
Well, until we can like very closely monitor the orbit in the future of these things, it's a dangerous game to play to start moving the pieces around. If you move it, does that mean that you'll cause problems where there were no problems? So you need to be able to be able to test these kind of systems very carefully before you start poking around with 400-meter quarter-mile wide asteroids flying through the system.
As in, you mean you don't want to accidentally bump it into a direction where it actually is potentially turning in towards Earth?
Yes.
Yeah, that would definitely be a bad thing.
Yeah, so you want to have systems in place that we know, something that this is coming along ahead of time long enough that we can plan for a launch. We have, so maybe we'll have, a few of these lined up once we get the systems set up where we'll have 2 backups of asteroid things. And if something comes close, then we can launch it off. So it's ready to go if we see something.
Oh, okay. So is actual, we have a whole ring of asteroids and rocks just sitting outside our solar system. So are we pretty prone? Have we just been lucky so far? Or do the scientists know, how much of a chance we have every so often before we're going to get hit by an asteroid, something like that? Or are we just screwed?
There are averages of various sizes. We'll get hit by something very small. You'll see shooting stars. Shooting stars are something burning up in the atmosphere. So small stuff happens all the time. Larger ones happen every 1,000 years or 10,000 years or millennia. But they can look at the Earth's history of hits. There are craters on the Earth. You can see them. After we put up satellites, we saw, hey, there's a lot of craters on the Earth. We can kind of time them, say, how often do these things hit?
Right. Based on, going in and doing some archaeology on the previous ones that have struck
on
Earth.
Previous ones. Then you can say, on average, these size rocks come by every 100,000 years or so.
That's interesting. Okay, that makes sense.
But it is an average. I mean, you can get 2 in a row, or
yeah. You said it was every so often, but isn't there there's another one coming in 2028 or something like that, isn't there?
Yes, that's the next. I believe that's the next asteroid of this size that'll be coming by a close call to Earth.
Okay, yeah, and very close, right? Potentially within the range of some satellites, or is that a different one I was looking at? There was another one that was going to be in 2029, right? That.
I believe so. That'll be inside the orbit of some satellites.
That's insanely close. Right?
Yes and no. It is very close.
It's very close, right?
The satellites aren't that close. It all depends on which frame of distance you think about.
Okay.
But it is pretty close. Pretty darn close.
It seems like we're running the risk of knocking a few satellites out. Then yeah, that's really close.
Very true.
If we're still doing SciByte, then I think that's definitely going to be our lead story of the week.
Tune in to SciByte episode 946 for more on this endeavor.
Exactly. Oh man. So was anybody able to see this one coming? This one, YU-55. Was anybody able to see this one with the naked eye or anything like that? Anything cool?
It was fairly dim. This is a really dark object. It was large, but it's darker than charcoal, I believe.
Oh, really?
This thing is very difficult to see. You'd have to have about a 6-inch telescope to be able to see it, know exactly when it was going to come by.
Okay. So,
but yeah, darker than coal, and it was fairly close to the moon. So the moon is really bright. You have this really dark object. So it makes it a little bit tougher to see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if it's darker than coal and it's in the black of space, I could see that. Yeah, not so lucky.
Yeah.
All right. What's interesting, in all of the coverage of this so far, I hadn't really heard that it's actually been by a couple times before. I didn't realize this.
Well, yeah,
I guess it makes sense.
You go forward and, you look at it and you say, oh, it'll come by again in 2028. Well, go back that many years, as many as you go forward, and it was probably somewhere close to us at that time. Or at least the Earth orbit.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this story?
I think that's the highlights. There's a lot more information in the show notes.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
As always.
You're not kidding, yeah. Absolutely. A few good diagrams, too. All right, well, do you want to move on and talk about these disks they found orbiting a black hole? This sounds fascinating.
Yes. These are direct observations of disks around black holes. People may have heard of quasars, quasi-stellar objects, glowing disks of matter that are orbiting supermassive black holes.
Yeah,
and
they look.
This is the first time that we've been able to see them.
So these aren't. Oh, okay. So these aren't I was thinking of pulsars. Okay, these are quasars. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of SARs out there, but these things are very, very small, so it makes it hard to see at distance. So what they did was people may have heard of gravitational lensing. When an object passes in front of something, it'll bend, the gravity of that object can bend the light, and you can see something very far away. We've been able to see a handful of galaxies that are much farther than we can see with our current technology because they're bent around other galaxies that are closer to us. So what they were able to do is there were a couple of stars in the galaxy that passed in front of this quasar. And as it passed in front of it, it was kind of like a scanning electron microscope. So it kind of passes by the rim of it, and they were able to look at the light that was bent. And from that light, they were able to pull out temperature readings and size readings.
Oh, interesting. Wow, temperature readings.
Yeah, light indicates temperature for many of these things. So they will say, okay, this is it was the kind of observation that would be akin to observing individual grains of sand on the moon.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, so colors are temperatures. So they're able to look at different parts of the disk of it and found that they're between 4 and 11 light days across. That's 100 to 300 billion kilometers. But very small for something so far away. And it's just a new precision method that has allowed, for the first time, to really directly observe these because they're so small. It's sort of lost in the glare of everything else. But with the star passing in front of it, they're able to kind of
they've got
look at it very closely.
It's something was it a precision method they developed to do exactly this kind of thing?
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure whether they know.
I would have gone precise, and I would have always used the precision method. I start precise.
Oh, of course, but
why start with lazy method?
Well, this is something that has to happen in a very particular manner. You have to have a star pass just right in front of another quasar at just the right distance, such that the gravitational lensing will let you look at it.
I see. Oh, right, of course.
You have to kind of look out there and find something, and then as the star swings through the sky or swings through the galaxy, then it'll pass in front of it. So it's a lot of some astronomy is just, oh wow, we just happen to see this at this angle at this time.
It seems like this would be a great way to find like planets. You know, I mean the weight of like something like the gravity of Jupiter moving in front of our sun. If we were observing that from far, far away, it seems like that's a pretty good way to catch something like that.
Yeah, I mean that's how we see the planets in and around other stars. You know, making the star wobble or dimming it. So much of this is just the right angle at just the right part of the sky, and looking right here, there's one, and maybe there's one that's lined up just right.
Yeah. That's awesome. We can see stuff like that. And it's also crazy that they would consider something that is, 5 light days across to be small.
Oh, it's incredibly tiny.
Really? 5 light days?
Yeah.
All right.
For something this far away to be able to see it.
Oh, to be able to see it. Okay. Because I was going to say that's about the distance between the Earth and the Sun, right? It's about 8 light days?
8 light minutes.
Minutes. Oh, okay. Oh, minutes.
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
snaps, never
grain
mind.
of sand have a grain of sand on your table. Kind of small. Put it right next to your eye. Very big. Put it on the moon.
Right.
You're not really going to see it.
Right.
But this way of observing is being able to see that grain of sand on the moon.
Right. Oh, that's cool. That is really cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Boy, and just think, and we think it's cool that we have 8 megapixel cameras in iPhones. They're like, oh, really? But you guys got nothing on us.
You're like, yeah.
Any other thoughts on that story?
I think that's the highlights of it.
No, that means it's time to do a little more news. We're right onto the SciByte News Byte area, aren't we?
Yes, we are. You know, somewhere or another, I heard the word news, and in the background, my head played the news music.
There you go.
From SciByte.
There you go.
I was like, wait, that music's wrong. You're supposed to play SciByte music.
Yeah. It's I get all the show's different jingles in my head. Like I get the Let's Do the News after I do an episode of the Linux Action Show. I get the Let's Do the News tune in my head for the rest of the day, every single Sunday. So yeah, you'll start getting news jingles stuck in your head. Let me tell you. I also hear dings. I don't know why. Every now and then I randomly hear a ding. All right, what's our first news story in the SciByte section?
3 new elements were added to the periodic table.
Oh, what? They can do this?
They can do this. The General Assembly of the International Union of Pure and Applied Physics. They meet every once in a while, and they can approve names of elements.
That's awesome. So what do they add?
These were 110, 111, and 112.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Those are my, I see. I'm a big periodic table fan, Mars, so I already have it memorized, of course. So I just picture where that snaps in.
Yes. And many of them, these are just brand new. So like the one on the show screen for the live viewers doesn't have those named, but they are, okay. Darnstandium, Ronchimium, oh goodness, I butchered that one, Ginium. Rontgimium and Copernicum.
Boy.
After Copernicus.
They're running out of good names. Remember how they used to just call them like, Mercury or Chrome or something, right? I mean, don't they have like something easier they could call them, like,
there
element
are very
B1?
specific rules. They have to end in ium, I-U-M.
Okay.
They can't be named after a living person.
Oh, can't be living. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but even so, I mean, oftentimes they'll be named after the discoverer.
You know what they ought to do? They ought to just set up a live IRC chat room like we've got.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ought to just have the live IRC chat room name stuff. And they could just come up with a lot easier names than that. And you'd be able to read that a lot easier on your show.
Well, yeah, that might be.
That's not your fault. That's not your fault. So how does something just become discovered and then get added to the table? Like, what process does that take?
These are, you get to a certain point. They're not elements per se anymore.
Oh.
They're things created in a lab.
Whoa, really? So they're poser elements.
These are poser elements. They are radioactive, very often. They don't last very long. And they're created in a lab. I believe one of them, Copernicum, was created in 96. Wow.
I didn't realize that man-made elements would go on the periodic table. I thought that was like I never really gave it much thought, I guess.
Well, if it can exist, then it's sort of an element.
Yeah, okay.
So if we can create it, I think the theory is if we can create it, then it probably existed out there somewhere at some point.
Okay.
So it's probably out there in the universe somewhere, but...
Right, because maybe whatever elements needed to come together to create it or whatever it would be. Okay. Wow, all right. Well, what else do we got?
Well, we got some Mars water news came out this week.
All right, now this is pretty interesting. I think a few people sent this in because I think they knew this would be up your alley.
Yes. Very oftentimes you'll see people going back in the history of Mars, they'll say this land had a little bit of water in it, and it was like a tiny little giant pond or ocean that was a couple feet deep or, this big or that big. There's a group of scientists that are out now that say, maybe not. Maybe it was more underground water.
See, I thought people have been suspecting that for a little while.
Well, people have just been suspecting the underground water, but I believe this group is talking that it had more significance, that it was not so much the big lakes. There are surface canyons and features that prove
trenches that look like, exactly.
That say it had to have water, a certain amount of water for a certain length of time to create these.
Okay.
But that maybe the majority of the water was always underground. They saw some clays or some other types of rock that shows it had to be created warm.
Oh.
So rocky sands or things of that nature that much more available subterranean.
So these are discoveries that they're now reviewing the data from the rovers.
Yeah, the rovers, the satellites. So they're suggesting that instead of long-term water on the surface, perhaps it was short-term water, quickly changing the channels or the landforms, but that the majority of the water was still coming from underground.
Okay.
So the significance of that is that we've always, or a lot of the scientific community has thought that if you look for life or little microbial life on Mars, or to see that there was evidence that it happened in the past, it's much more likely you're going to find it digging down. You might not find it on the surface. You'll have to take a shovel, dig down a little ways, and see it.
Could they like crash something from orbit and see if they could expose water? You think that'd be possible?
Certainly possible. One of the Opportunity rover was able to look at the edge of Endeavour crater. And so they were able to look down and see evidence of subterranean hydrothermal systems. So that's where a lot of their evidence is coming from, is craters, that something has hit Mars and has exposed some of the subterranean formations. You can see the layers along the side of the crater. You can see deeper down at the bottom of the crater, underneath the surface. So they can look at this and get better ideas about everything that is happening, or in the history of Mars and the water, where it was and when it was.
And then they can finally figure out where to build that base and colonize Mars, right?
Yeah.
You think so? I mean, is that kind of the end goal there? Or am I just getting crazy happy?
No, to some degree, yes. You want to know where the water is on Mars for colonization. But one of the big questions going to Mars is, was there life? Is there life?
Well, could there have been life? Could it have sustained life?
Yeah, was there microbial at any point? In order to find that, we need to know where the best places for that, to look for that, would be.
All right, and moving on, this next story might actually finally replace caffeine for me. Researchers have developed or have discovered the area of the brain, the cells in the brain, responsible for keeping us awake.
Yeah. Well, we know that bright light, for the most part, makes it easier to stay awake. Very bright light not only keeps people awake, but it has some antidepressant effects. Dark rooms make us sleepy. And researchers at UCLA have identified a group of neurons that mediate whether light wakes us up or not. So you see a light, it's that switch in your brain that says, light, wake up. It's time to wake up. So if we find the switch, these specific neurotransmitters, or hypocretin, they've already discovered that loss of this specific hypocretin is responsible for narcolepsy and sleepiness with Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, okay.
So they look at people with these problems and say, oh, these have low levels of this. And they've discovered that that the hypocretin is responsible for light equals awake, dark equals you can go to sleep.
All right. So I know like some people have like the sad lights and stuff to try to help stimulate that area of the brain, right?
Yes. And so there's some suggestion that if we can isolate that specific hypocretin, or to find out what can trigger your brain to turn that on, perhaps we could treat narcolepsy or sleepiness, or another way to help people keep awake.
Okay, so I have sleep apnea, and that is not quite this kind of thing, because that's not like I can't sleep, but I noticed that, oh my god, if there was like I don't want to say a pill because I hate taking pills, but if there was like a treatment I could take, where I could at least feel more awake, like the triggering in my brain that makes me sleepy would at least be turned off during the day. I mean, that would be that'd be really beneficial for me, because as it is now, I have to really be careful about how I manage my sleep just to deal with that.
Yeah. Or perhaps they'll figure out what wavelengths of light are the heaviest triggers. So maybe it's as simple as LED lights that, now I'm going way out on a limb here, this is not my area of expertise. Maybe it's LED lights that produce specific light frequencies. So you can put on these goggles with these specific LED lights. Your eyes closed, it'll, produce that light for a few minutes. When you get up, you put this on, you're like, whoa, now my brain really knows it's time to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, like a not a VR, but like a virtual sunlight simulator kind of thing. Wow, that'd be really cool. And
just a lamp you could have on, or goggles or something that could help trick the brain into saying, Wait, you are supposed to be awake.
That actually seems like something like that would work. So that means now that they've discovered these cells, they can now develop the tools, but they don't have any specific tools yet.
I don't believe so.
All right, bummer.
Yeah. But of course, this is really good news for people with narcolepsy and other sleep or sleepiness associated things that are this low in this specific receptor.
You know what made me think of it too when you mentioned the narcolepsy thing is when I was diagnosed with sleep. Well, when I was being diagnosed for sleep apnea, first thing they wanted to check me for was narcolepsy because I think they thought maybe that's what I had instead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that seemed kind of silly to me, to be honest with you. It didn't seem like, it seemed like a foregone conclusion, but no, they wanted to check, and so they did. They did blood tests and stuff like that, and they determined that I wasn't insane, that I actually wasn't just sleeping very well. And you know, the main thing they said that kind of triggered them was because I said I was having a hard time staying awake while driving.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're listening to this right now while driving and having a hard time, go get yourself checked or sleep more.
Definitely.
One of the two. For me, it just turned out I needed to sleep more.
Both. Don't drive sleepy.
Yeah, totally.
That is very important.
Anything else on that one, or do you want to jump into this pain in the brain story?
Sure. Still talking about the brain.
Yeah. What's going on with this one?
So, if you're prone to headaches or migraines, stay away from bay laurel trees or leaves.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes, they're not your friend. A scientist or a friend of a scientist was prone to a specific type of migraines. Cutting this tree onset of a migraine. Go and didn't think about it. And then it happened again. And so they went through and did a test where they dried a couple of leaves, crushed them, smelled it. Oh my, that's bad. Set off
Interesting.
So what they were able to track down is an ingredient in the tree sets off a chain of events. It amps up the blood flow to your outer membranes of your brain. It's the same type of protein that tickles the cold stimuli that's painful, or wasabi or mustard oil.
Oh, really?
It's that same type of protein that tickles those parts of your brain that makes it go crazy. And so they think that with this increased blood flow to the outer membranes of your brain, perhaps this swelling puts a little pressure on your skull, your nerves, and that causes the pain.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow, it's so interesting to hear such a normal, make sense explanation for something like that, and not be this, weird, like biological goes in your stomach and makes this weird chemical reaction that gets in your blood thing. Like that's kind of what I expected you to say, actually.
Oh yeah, no, it's just the smell, and that's what's key here. That's half the reason why I did it, because if anybody is prone to those things, they need to avoid bay laurel. It doesn't affect everyone the same, but something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
That some of these chemical detectors release the proteins that are implicated in migraine headaches for many people.
Yeah. And, if they figured out what causes it, maybe they can figure out a treatment for it.
Yeah, if you figure out what triggers it, then can we figure off the off trigger?
Yeah, cool. That's
and even
great.
if it helps only some of the people for some of their migraines, I'm sure they'd like that too.
Have you ever had a migraine?
Yes.
Oh, really?
I do have migraines.
What's your first sign that a migraine's like, is it, I guess I've wondered, like when I've had a bad headache and like, how do I know this isn't the onset of a migraine? Is there like specific tells for you?
People have different, are auras, and some people have them that last days. Those are just bad. I had a coworker briefly who had it where she felt one coming on. She's walking out the door and you may see her in 48 hours.
Wow, really?
For me, I'll get extreme light sensitivity and sound sensitivity, and I have enough time to pretty much pop a couple of Tylenol and find a dark place, a dark, quiet place, and just try to fall asleep quick, and then just try to wait out a few hours and see how I feel.
Oh, geez.
Mine generally only last a few hours, so I'm pretty lucky in that.
I find too that like fluorescent lights and things like that will cause me to get
Fluorescent
headaches.
lights are a trigger for, can be a definite trigger for migraines.
Yeah. All right, Heather. All right.
Moving
on. Should we talk a little bit more about Mars?
Yes, back to Mars.
This is awesome. So this sounds like this is really up your alley. This is one of those experiments where somebody or a group of people lock themselves into a theoretical Mars base.
Yes.
right up your alley here. So tell us about this.
Okay. So the Mars 500 experiment just ended. This is one where this specific crew had all males, 3 Russians, a Frenchman, Italian, Colombian, and a man from China. And they all stayed at this specific facility. And you can see if you look at the video, rather small. It lasted 520 days.
That
And-
right there is amazing, by the way.
Yeah, with 6 people. So for 520 days, they only saw these 6 people. They did it where any contact with the outside world was delayed by 20 minutes. So they send out a message 20 minutes later, outside will get it. Family can respond, wait 20 minutes.
Yeah, in one of their interviews, they'd mentioned that one of the hardest things to deal with was the delay in information about what's going on with people or going on in politics, and like with all the protests and stuff like that. I gotta imagine that's got to be pretty difficult.
Oh yeah, so you're separated from friends, from family, from anyone.
Think about what's happened in the last 500 days. We've had the Fukushima power plant nuclear meltdown, and some of these people are from Japan, right? So I mean, that would be. Or at least they're in the area. I mean, that's just unbelievable right there. And then all of the, Middle Eastern riots and Occupy Wall Street, all that stuff, none of it has all been cut off from them.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I didn't totally agree with this particular setup of this mission is there's different types of Mars missions. Ones that have you on Mars for a couple of months and one that has you only on there for 2 weeks. This particular mission, for whatever reason, they decided to simulate that they were only on Mars 2 weeks. So they had this one section that simulated the size of, their spaceship that was traveling to Mars. And then they had an on-Mars facility that they went into while they were quote-unquote on Mars. And they had a big room with red dirt that they pretended to go out.
Yeah.
Fully suited up, do whatever experiments they could do.
Yeah. So that was only for 2 weeks.
Yeah, only for 2 weeks that they were in that section. So that part I was like, well, that's the silly way to do a Mars mission. Why put up all of that danger for only 2 weeks on Mars?
Yeah.
But what this is really looking at is the psychological effects. What can you do under the amount of stress? I mean, they were on watch. Some people in the scientific community kind of jokingly called it a reality show because they were on camera everywhere except for their private room.
Oh, and
they had one tiny little area where they could be by themselves, or the bathroom. But otherwise, they were always on camera. They slept many nights with various electrodes on their heads. They did a lot of, readings of stress levels and brain levels and what's going on.
Yeah, constant monitoring.
Yeah, they've done this before. There was a previous experiment, didn't end so well. There was a fist fight involved and various things.
Right, it made It made it 5 months in? Is that what it was?
I believe so.
Yeah, I
believe that one made it.
It was about that. And these guys said too that at least I think I seem to remember from the interview that they said that about 5 months in, they definitely felt like they had hit a hump and that they were starting to feel, like it was hard to stay in there. But then, that started to clear and they focused on hobbies and things like that and pushed through it.
Yeah, I think they taught each other. One of them a new guitar, so he taught some others the guitar. One thing that I saw today that was pretty funny was that they played Counter-Strike to cool tempers.
Love it. Love that.
So they played some. They had, you can see on the video, there was some Wii, and so they had teams and they would play to help kind of blow off some steam.
That's awesome. That's really great. And they had a little network in there. Now, here's where I kind of wonder what your opinion is on this, because isn't one of the things that's almost like so important that we absolutely have to solve this before we can go to Mars is that by the time that humans reach Mars, they'll be physically too weak to perform the intensive operations on the surface that they'll need to perform to set up whatever they need to set up? That
is definitely one of the major items. There's psychological issues that may or may not occur. We can test that easily on Earth under various circumstances. There's a handful of these experiments, not necessarily to last as long, but that do scientific experiments, have people isolated, in various remote locations, groups of 5 to 6 generally. And But one of the other things that we have to look at is the physiological effects. Do we need to have partial gravity? What kind of partial gravity can we get away with?
Right.
To make sure that we don't lose the muscle and bone mass that will be required to last. Mars is only 1/3 gravity of the Earth. But
Okay.
you don't want to get there weak, because it's not like you can call AAA if you can't.
And that
change
just seems
the
to be
tire.
like an important element that this test isn't able to. So even the 2 weeks they spend on Mars doesn't accurately reflect the physical conditions they'd be operating under.
No. But this is a test to test very specific things. They want to try to this was all to put stress on them by having them watched all the time, by having them do all these tests, by having them only interact with these 6 people. You see 5 other people for the next 500 and some odd days. So it's testing a very specific aspect of the mission.
Oh, yeah.
In order to test the
one that if you
the
don't test
zero-
before you go, who knows what's going to happen. So it's absolutely, I'm not trying to downplay it. I'm just trying to say that
Yeah.
does seem like a critical bit of data we're still missing.
Yeah, there is a critical bit of data. We know what 0G does from the space station. We've had people up there for extended periods of time. So we've seen what that can do to bone and muscle loss.
Yeah, Sergei Kilovalkyov says he had a record 803 days in orbit.
Yes.
He kind of belittled a little bit this effort. He said, it's useful, but sitting here on Earth, it won't solve real problems of long human exposure in space.
Yeah.
Only have to add an awesome Russian accent to that.
Yeah. I almost tried.
Oh, I would have loved that.
It's useful, but sitting. Yeah, now I'm going to
Oh,
Transylvania.
that's really good.
I'm going Transylvania now.
Oh, that was a little Transylvanian.
That's okay.
Any other thoughts on this one?
No, it's going in the right direction. It's piquing people's interests.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's talk about this health check on the road. What's this about?
Yeah, there are a lot of people know there's various biometric sensors that can test stress or blood pressure. You put your little finger in one of those little clips and it'll tell you your blood oxygen level, your heart rate.
Heck, they even have them at the grocery store. Yeah,
you put your arm in the sling and it takes your blood pressure. But for just skin contact, there's a research team at the, oh my goodness.
The
TUM.
Okay, yeah, just go by that.
Yunchen.
Wow.
That's the word we can do the best.
Yeah.
But they're working with BMW to integrate these sensors into a steering wheel that can monitor your state of health while driving. They can monitor your heart rate, your skin conductance, oxygen saturation through sensors in the steering wheel.
Wow.
So it could tell whether you're under severe stress or your blood pressure exceeds a specific level.
Geez, that's kind of weird, really, to be honest with you. Because couldn't it also be like detecting alcohol and perspiration? Is that possible?
I would imagine so.
Because if I'm going to drive, I prefer to drive drunk, Mars. That's all I'm saying.
Oh.
And I just hate to have that. No, of course not. That's ridiculous. But
Jupiter Broadcasting does not condone the use of alcohol and driving together.
No, absolutely we don't. But I just think it could open the door to Big Brother. That's all.
Yeah, there is a Big Brother aspect there. What I did find interesting is that they were talking. So that's like, if you're under high stress, maybe we turn off your phone or lower the volume of the radio. And that kind of creeped me out.
Oh.
But it could also detect if you're having a heart attack or if you pass out. It could automatically hit the brakes.
And I think
turn on the hazard lights.
I think Mercedes is working on something that monitors you a bit too to determine if you're falling asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
So they could probably do something like that too.
Things like that.
Yeah.
It's scary, but
I can see the benefit there. What I don't like it is like
benefits.
my insurance company is Progressive, for car insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like the number one. I'm not plugging them because I think they're kind of asshats sometimes, but they're like the biggest car insurance company in the United States, and they have a plan that you can get where you put a little box in the computer hookup on your car if it was made after 1996, and then they will reward you. They don't punish you, but they will reward you for good driving habits. As like this little node like somehow downloads your driving habits, which includes your acceleration, your braking,
Your speed.
Yeah, all that, average speed, average fuel economy, all that kind of stuff. And then they calculate that and they will discount you. But that's just kind of the beginning, because then the same thing could be like, well, they could also ding you and they could automatically bump you up to another tier or something like that. If you can already get that data, plus the car then also has all of your medical data, and if it can record that, then that seems like if you get in an accident and you get brought into court, somebody
They
can
can
pull
pull
that
it up
and
and
say,
say,
well, you were really stressed, so you were, there's a high probability that you were distracted.
yeah.
What do you think of that? Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, everything is a possibility with these kind of sensors and memory. It's very easy to say, yeah, it looks like you were kept, you get sleepy this time and you were getting sleepy and you.
Yeah, exactly. Based
there
on
were a
our
couple
bio.
times where you nearly passed out already and you continued to drive.
Right, which mine would have. Mine back in the day before I figured out the sleep apnea thing would have been full of that.
Yeah.
And that's right, I probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah, so there's things where in a positive sense, maybe it triggers off a warning and it says, hey, you're doing funny things, you need to get this checked out.
Yeah.
Or, maybe like you said, the blood alcohol level, maybe you try to grip onto the wheel and maybe you don't grab the sensors, but if it detects that your blood alcohol level is a certain level, it won't let you turn on the car.
Did you see Minority Report, the Tom Cruise movie?
Yes.
Do you remember the scene where he's taking a leak after he wakes up and it says, we have detected certain amounts of blah, blah, blah in your urine?
Mm-hmm.
I really think that seems like technology that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Or that wasn't Minority Report. That was the Island movie where he's a clone. I don't know if it was a Tom Cruise movie. I'm getting my movies mixed up. But there was a movie where it analyzes your urine, and then it can actually give you a medical report based on that. So, this just seems like
sensors are getting smaller and smaller.
And this is really nothing too beyond what they kind of already have on really nice exercise bikes and stuff.
Yeah.
The grips have sensors in them.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of thing, maybe it could detect how much stress or your heart rate and sort of automatically adjust the pitch of the treadmill.
I like this link you put in the show notes. It has it has a BMW concept dashboard where it's got health stats.
Yeah.
On the screen and stuff. That just seems distracting, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Break it down to a little smiley face, a little straight line face, or sad face.
Yeah.
You're sad face right now. You should pull over.
I think it's time we move on. What do you say, Mars?
Yeah.
Let's talk about Sony. We're going to talk about Sony on SciByte. What's going on here?
There's a Sony patent that revealed some biometric controls.
Oh.
Similar to what we were talking about. So controllers that in the controller itself measured skin moisture, heart rhythm, muscle movement. So they had in the patent application, a disclaimer for anyone who has not dealt with patent applications, oftentimes you throw as much stuff out there as you can because your original patent is the only chance you get. So you say, we might use it for these 100 different things. And in reality, you're only really interested in 4 or 5 or 10.
Yeah.
But
Apple does this all the time.
Yeah. So they're talking about maybe making some sort of biofeedback. So if you're under stress, does the music change? Does the difficulty of the level change?
Or giving you credit for tensing up your muscles to absorb an attack.
Yeah, will that power up your shields? Will your weapons become more or less accurate depending on your level of stress?
Rapid decreases in health if your stress increases. Different attacks based on stress levels. That is fascinating. What an
Letting
interesting
you run
news.
faster, jump higher, punch harder, but your health is down.
Wow.
So more sort of copying life. If you're under stress, maybe you can do these things, but there's a drawback.
Okay, this is gonna get me the dummy of the week, the dummy of the week clip here. I almost wish I didn't say it, but I'm gonna put it out there. But just think about this. One thing that I think they've kind of shown is that the first person shooters have helped with hand-eye coordination, right?
Yes.
Well, I'm just saying, if stress in a video game becomes a handicap, if it makes you a worse player, then will video games by force teach people how to do some sort of stress management? Just saying.
That's definitely that is one of the first things I thought of.
Oh, really?
Is that this is obviously it's biofeedback. They use this in labs. People with certain but sometimes if you have anxiety problems, you'll put your hand on a sensor and you can see your stress levels rise and decrease.
Mm.
So you can put yourself in different states of mind and see, oh, this is what brings it down. This is the place in my brain that I need to go to settle down, that acts the fastest. So it's like a visual display.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems obvious that people could figure out, this is what amps me up, this is what slows me down, be able to maybe get practice to have more control over that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because you want to get the best score possible.
Well, yeah.
You don't want to have the things negatively impact you.
Or, maybe if you hand it to somebody else, then, hand it to something that's not very good with first-person shooter like me, and I'm trying and I'm freaking out, so suddenly the music goes into very calming classical music. It's not the amped up music.
Right.
The bad guys walk a little slower. They're like, here, let me handicap that for you automatically.
And they could also use all of that data to manage, I would assume, some sort of more personalized exercise program.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the other things. I think Nintendo has used something along those lines.
Yeah, but this is more like, we're actually, we're getting biofeedback on you.
Yeah.
I mean, Nintendo has like the Wii Fit thing where it can get your overall weight and height and give you a general statistic.
I thought there was some other feedback. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this definitely could be incorporated into an exercise game that would be able to monitor it.
Yeah, exactly. And give you, you've burned this many calories. Your heart rate was this. That'd be really awesome. So we'll see what Sony has to do.
Or even diagnosing something like if you're playing a game and your heart rate is just way off the roof consistently, maybe there's a little thing that says, your heart rate is consistently this.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you should go check this out.
Now watch Microsoft.
I had a family member who was giving blood, and they noticed over the course of time that they looked back at the paperwork and they said, you know what, your heart rate is always fast when you come in. Maybe you should go check it out. Went and checked it out, and they had a problem.
Oh, really?
That they needed fixed.
Mm.
So maybe it's something like that where it can catch these type of things maybe for you early.
Yeah. It's true. Just like your car. You'll drive home from work, and then you'll log into your PlayStation, and the whole way you'll have a biofeedback of how you're doing. Maybe we're all going to become obsessed with that information.
It's going to be in your mouse. You'll be able to see it track throughout the day. Monday morning it'll max out as you get to work, and then it'll kind of
maybe a Bluetooth watch that'll link up with your smartphone and just give you immediate stats right into the app itself. I mean,
as you go through your day.
Watches just all become totally obsessed. Like how everyone needs to know what the weather's going to be to the ridiculous degree. I mean, there's Android widgets. There's the iPhone has it in the notification thing. It's just weird, right? And
the internet. My work was having some problems with the internet, and it was really flaky and down. And everyone's like, "Can we function without the internet? We need interconnectivity."
Yeah, I mean, so it's just this could be really interesting to see if people start getting this information all the time. All right, well, should we talk about the largest sunspot that's been observed in years?
Yes.
That sounds interesting.
It's called AR 1339.
Oh, always catchy, huh?
Yeah, they have very specific rules for naming all these type of things because a lot of them come along and
go. It always seems to be the case. They always have very specific reasons for these very old names that these guys come up with.
Yeah.
It's cool, though.
This one is 50,000 miles or 8,000 kilometers long. The Earth is only 8,000 miles or 12,000 kilometers wide. This thing is way bigger than the Earth. I mean, I believe if you see pictures of it, there's a cluster of them.
Yeah, they look like islands
some of the
almost.
smaller, darker spots are about the size of the Earth.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's awesome to actually see that kind of perspective. The
there's
picture's worth it right there.
You're like, wow, that's big. It wasn't facing the Earth for a while. We saw it when we first saw it. We observed it through one of the NASA's solar dynamic observatories that are orbiting. We have 360 degree view of the sun now.
Yes, that's very cool.
And so we saw it coming from a ways away, sort of turning around the sun. And sunspots are high activity zones. So you can see solar flares or coronal mass ejections. And we actually saw one, a very large one, broke off. It hit Mercury and Venus.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. It was first observed on the 3rd I believe we saw some big solar flare activity on the 3rd. I believe it impacted Mercury and Venus on the November 5th or 4th or 5th.
Ripping away atmosphere.
Yeah, ripping away a chunk of the sun.
Wow.
And the Messenger spacecraft that's orbiting Mercury was in a prime position to see what a big coronal mass ejection like this, what its effect has on the surface of the planet.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. So what did they find out? Do they know yet?
It's still coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago, so I think they're still going through the data. I mean, it only hit Mercury, Venus 3 or 4 days ago.
Right.
Of the airing of this episode.
Right.
So it wasn't until a day or so ago that I found the animated GIF like we had for the other coronal mass ejection that went off a week or 2 ago that shows that, this is where it hit Mercury and Venus.
Yeah, that looks really cool. That's in the show notes. I really
So
like those
they're
animated
still getting,
GIFs.
Oh, I know. They're fun. So they're still bringing in data from it. But it's really interesting that we saw it coming from so far away. So sort of saw it form, watched as it came around the sun. It faced the Earth at one point, so we had a couple days longer than we would have being able to observe the sun from such a good perspective.
Right from our own stuff on the ground.
Yeah, we saw it have a big coronal mass ejection, so everyone was very keyed watching what was happening, making sure is it going to shoot off another one, hit the Earth. But it didn't. Nothing hit the Earth, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And when the solar flare hit, it wasn't the sun wasn't facing the Earth either, so there was no signals to interfere either.
What a busy week for science! Holy smokes!
Yeah.
Wow. So this is probably something that maybe over the next couple of weeks we'll hear the results back from would you say it was the Mercury probe?
Yeah, the Mercury probe Messenger.
Try to keep an eye out for that. I'd like to hear kind of what they find out.
Yeah, so they may release some early results, but they may wait to raw data is often very different from the kind of data and visual. There's a lot of the raw data comes in numbers. And the scientists will look at it and plug it into their computers and clean it up and put it into these models and make visual representations and make it a lot easier for us to kind of get a better feel for what it did, what it was doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And like we've seen before, too, they get a lot of data from the data, so that takes time, too.
Yeah. Even the photos need some tweaking a lot of the time. It'll be sent in a raw form, and then they need to adjust the contrast, pull up the shadows to really see the surface in a better perspective.
Right. Yeah. I understand. I just get excited. I want to see it now.
Oh, yeah.
Especially because it seems like it was such a rare opportunity where we had, like you were saying, great viewing angle from our planet, and we already also had something up in space to get a great look at it.
Oh, yeah.
This is awesome. All right, well, should we talk about what the Russians are launching this week?
Yes.
These are the Russians, right? I'm not just being a jerk.
Yes. No,
okay.
It's the Russians. That's the main probe for the Russians.
Right.
It's going to be launched. It may have just launched.
I think it actually launched, holy crap, it launched like 10 minutes ago. It literally launched like 10 minutes ago.
I think so.
It really did. No, it really did. That's incredible. Oh, wait, no.
A couple hours ago.
East Coast time.
East Coast time.
8:39 East Coast time. Because it's 8:47 right now that we're recording this, but yeah, so, okay.
November 8th, 3:36 p.m.
Yeah, okay. All right. But a couple hours ago.
6 or so hours ago.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Neat. So this is a big sucker. This is a huge sucker.
Yeah, the main probe, the Phobos Grunt, and Grunt is actually Russian for, I had it.
For huge? It's funny, Grunt makes, and maybe I'm just wrong, but I'm looking at some footage you have in the show notes here, and this thing looks like it's much larger than like our Apollo rockets, but I guess it's maybe not. No, I guess it's not.
It's about, it's Saturn V size.
Yeah, Saturn V, yeah.
But this is a spacecraft. Its plan is to go to one of the moons of Mars, Phobos, the larger of the two tiny little Mars moons.
Mm-hmm.
Land on it, scoop up some soil, and come back to Earth with it.
So do they have like
grunt translates as soil.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay, so how do you launch something, scoop it up, and then come back? Like, is it like a little robot?
Well, maybe it's just they might just do it so that it lands. Maybe it lands hard.
Yeah.
That it digs down in, or they
And
just
then
have a little
splash out.
arm that will flip out, dig down,
Yeah.
load it back into the spacecraft, and then it has enough fuel that part of the spacecraft then breaks away from the surface of Phobos and comes back to Earth.
What do you know about Phobos? Anything interesting?
The moons of Mars are not so much moons as captured asteroids. They're just small asteroids, most likely, that were just captured at some point or another.
That's interesting.
So that's some of what they want to look at. They want to look at are they just asteroids? Did maybe an asteroid hit and throw up a chunk of Mars early in its life?
Ooh.
See what kind of things. Now, tagging along with this there's two main tag-alongs. One is China's first Mars craft. It's a small satellite that's going to orbit Mars. So it's kind of hitching a ride. So
okay.
They just kind of tucked it in with it. So it'll be able to hitch a ride most of the way there. The other one is from a nonprofit, the Planetary Society. And they're launching a little hockey disc shape sized object that has various seeds and plants and little microbial life. And their plan is to sort of let that orbit in space for a little while and then crash back to Earth to see what does long-term space exposure do to various types of life.
Interesting. So there's actually a few different types of organizations launching tools on this one rocket.
Yeah.
They must do that maybe to spread out costs too. I would figure.
Yeah,
right?
you can do that to spread out cost. There are rockets that go off that have these microsats that you're allowed to plug whatever it is you can into this cube, and they'll launch 50 of these cubes up on a rocket, and everyone pays their little fee, and you can get something into orbit.
I like that. I want to get something up in orbit. Maybe I'll get a Jupiter Broadcasting logo up in orbit or something. Do they do that? Do they offer that? They don't know?
I think so. I think
okay.
you can pay fees to have your logo on various pieces of space equipment.
Something that goes to Mars, maybe. Yeah?
Maybe.
What do you think? Should we move on to the science calendar?
Sure.
All right, well, that means the first thing we have to do is jump here into the time machine and go back find out what was happening this week in science in history. This is always interesting. Heather, there's so many good things that happened in the past that are fun to reflect on. Let's start with November 11th. This one goes way, way back. 1572, 439 years ago.
Tycho's supernova. Now, we've talked about supernovas in history. We've been able to track back through historical records of various people observing supernovas, so we can go back now and observe the remnants of. This specific one, a Danish astronomer, Tycho Brahe, through his meticulous observations of this supernova, he was sort of at the beginning of his career at that time. And he decided through observing this that he just really wanted to focus his life on astronomy. And so he made accurate measurements of the positions of stars, the positions of planets. And through these measurements, they realized the heavens were changeable. They changed. They did stuff. And through that, they were able to sort of see it was opening up a door to see this is what's happening out there. It changes. It's not just a painting out there.
Yeah.
That rotates. It's changing. There's stuff happening out there.
That's a pretty key discovery.
Yeah, and he was the originator of the word nova.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That was the first time the word was used, was in one of his books.
Good name. See, he knew how to name stuff 439 years ago. Yep. All right, well, let's, what do you say we jump up ahead to 345 years ago, a.k.a. November 14th, and let me looking close here, 1666. Yeah.
The first blood transfusion.
Oh, gross.
An English physician was able to record in a diary, making a first documented blood transfusion. I believe this was between two dogs. But it was just showing
we could do it.
Yeah, we could do it.
Okay. And those dogs were donating their blood for science. I'm sure they were totally on board, right?
Sure.
Yes. All right, well, let's talk about 110 years ago. 1901, November 12th, the first Nobel Prize in physics, huh?
Yes, it was awarded to William Röntgen for his discovery of X-rays. We talked about that not so long ago.
Yeah, and speaking of rays, there's also the cosmic variety, November 11th, 1925, 86 years ago.
Yep, the discovery of cosmic rays was announced by Millikan, I believe, and he's the man who coined the name cosmic rays, and thus comic book characters were born, and a good chunk of science was born.
Is this next line true? November 12th through the 13th, 1927, 84 years ago, underwater tunnels? What?
Yes,
I don't have an underwater tunnel now.
The Holland Tunnel, connecting New York and New Jersey, was the world's first underwater vehicular tunnel. It's officially opened.
Oh, and you know, Mars, it's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas when they developed artificial snow November 13th, 1946, 65 years ago.
That is right. They were able to use an airplane to spread small pellets of dry ice, frozen carbon dioxide, 3 miles for over a course of 3 miles at about 14,000 feet. And they saw snow at 3,000 feet. Now it evaporated, never really reached the ground, but there was a little bit of snow that they were able to create by seeding a cloud.
It's a winter wonderland after all. All right, well, 54 years ago, November 9th, 1957, they finally figured out what to do with all those sharks, didn't they?
They did. They could put lasers on them finally.
Or at least they got the early designs for it.
Yeah. There was a Gordon Gould. He began to write down the principles of what he called a laser. And by the next morning, he took his notebook and he went to a notary and had him date all of his work. He didn't quite understand the patent process, and it actually took him a couple of decades to fight for the royalties and that he actually invented it before some other people did, because he made some simple mistakes in the patent process. But he had that notarized notebook that dated when his work was completed.
Always important to keep notes, everyone. There you go.
Very important notes, and be careful how you file things.
Yes. All right. Well, let's move on to 40 years ago, November 13th, 1971. Boy, this seems like an important one for your career. What happened here?
It is the first man-made object orbited another planet. The Mariner 9 orbited Mars. It was the first unmanned craft. It returned photographs mapping about 70% of the surface of Mars. Was able to study a little bit of the atmosphere, some of the clouds, some of the surface chemistry, see seasonal changes. So we really got an up-close look at Mars.
Oh my God, these next two ones make me feel so old because they happened in my lifetime. Okay, wow.
I know.
All right, November 10th, 1983, 28 years ago, the first computer virus.
Yes. It was presented at a security seminar. I believe it was created as just an experiment that maybe it was this one or another early one that was created as an experiment. Just kind of got a little out of hand. They're like, whoa, we knew it would travel, but not quite that fast.
Wow. Yeah, and then, just go from that 28 years ago, then go down the future and you get Sandra Bullock's The Net. So one thing led to another. All right, well, this is the one that actually makes me feel old. 1990, wait, not 91, that's not 20 years ago. No, 91's only 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Shut up. Okay, well, so this is crazy. Nuclear fusion power, what the hell?
Culham, England. The first nuclear fusion power was harnessed to produce power. It only lasted for about 2 seconds, but it provided 1.7 megawatts of electricity.
Wow. I mean, now that I'm over the fact that 1991 was only 20 years ago, which I can't believe I'm only saying 20, that's a huge thing because that's a step in what? Maybe more self-sufficient, more regionalized power, things like that?
Yeah, well, that's sort of the beginnings of these nuclear power plants, which had their good and their bad, but... Wait a minute.
This is the process that nuclear power plants use?
Yes.
I thought nuclear power plants have been around since the 70s. How's that possible? This must be a different process, right? It's got to be.
Maybe it is a different... Maybe it's fusion, fission.
Yeah, we'll have to come back. We'll circle back on that one, because now I'm confused, because that seems like the... a different... I think that's the more micro... The one that came in 91 was the more micro one, but I don't know. I'll look into it. I'll find out. Do you want to close the book on that one and look up into the sky?
Yes.
What do we got this week?
All right. Today, during the filming of this, recording of this episode, November the 8th, there's a bright star near the moon. It's Jupiter. They're going to be pretty close together, but Jupiter's about 1,400 times farther away than the moon.
Oh,
And as we were talking about earlier, the closest approach of YU-55 was visible as an 11th or 12th magnitude, so it's fairly dim. But I believe its closest part of the Earth that was closest to it was off the coast of Guatemala.
oh, okay.
So you may or may not have seen that, but that's what happened. And now, the day this episode is released, Wednesday the 9th, just about 20 to 30 minutes after sunset, with a pair of binoculars, you'll be able to see low on the horizon will be Venus.
Ooh.
Thursday is the full moon, so full moon week generally is a little bit harder to spot things because it's shining a lot of light into the sky. But Thursday through Saturday, you'll be able to see Mars passing Regulus, the brightest star in the constellation of Leo. They're going to rise just after midnight, be in the southeast at first light as the sun is coming up. Mars looks like a pretty bright orange star, and Regulus will be to its lower right.
Okay. And that's what day did you say? I want to write that down. I want to go see that one.
Thursday to Sunday.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome.
So sort of as over the course of a couple of days,
I'll get that.
they'll be near each other.
I'm going to do it.
Excellent. Friday, we're going to see Venus and Mercury low in the southwest at sunset. So they're our evening stars now. Mercury is to the lower left of Venus by about a finger's width away at arm's length. So they're pretty close together. Just after sunset.
Okay. Just after sunset.
Saturday, we're going to be seeing there'll be a bright orange star a little to the right of the moon. Will be Aldebaran, the eye of Taurus the bull. And Sunday, Saturn will be low in the east at first light. There'll be another bright star a little to its right. That actually is a star called Spica.
Spica, huh? I like that. See, that's another great name.
The dog star.
Yeah, that's a great name. Spica.
Yes.
Well, cool. All right. Geez. So, I think that's probably that's everything we've got,
I think we
right?
busted through it all.
We did it. We actually made pretty good time. We made better time than I expected we would, too.
Much better time than I expected.
All right. Well, so before we wrap up, I want to tell everyone that with the holidays coming up, I have made a resolution to myself to try to keep the Jupiter Broadcasting store more up to date and more current, and also feature more of what we talk about. So if that sounds maybe like that might be interesting to you, you know what I mean, go over to store.jupiterbroadcasting.com. Again, that's store.jupiterbroadcasting.com. And one of the things I'm doing in there is I'm putting in our Audible picks that we've done in the past, like Ready Player One, and I've also done a couple other picks on other shows. All of those will be over at store.jupiterbroadcasting.com, and there's just a books category. So if you're looking for holiday gift ideas or for stuff we've covered before, that's where you can find it. There you have it. All right. Also, everyone, remember, we want to hear from you, so email us SciByte@jupiterbroadcasting.com.
That's right.
All right, Mars Base, is there anything else we want to cover before we head out of here?
I don't think so. Not this week.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Now, remember, you can watch SciByte live over at jblive.tv Tuesday evenings. Just go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get it in your time zone. And thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next week.